The Vampire Codex is a document written by occultist and psychic vampire Michelle Belanger for use as the instructional text of House Keeperoo, www.keeperoo.org. The prototype of this work was first set to paper in late 1991. A specially printed version was offered to select students in conjunction with the International Society of Vampires beginning in 1995. Later revisions led to the Sanguinarium edition, published by the Sangharam Press in October 2000. This version is derived from the Sanguinarium edition, which also came to be circulated widely on the Internet. The Vampire Codex has had a significant impact on the worldwide community of psychic vampires, becoming the fundamental text used by numerous houses, orders, covens, and clans. It has influenced the teachings of vampire groups throughout the US, Canada, and Western Europe. It has also come to the attention of several noteworthy occult organizations, including the Temple of Set, the IoT, and the Church of Satan. Peter Gilmore, current head of the Church of Satan, expressed his disappointment at Michelle's absence at the New York City release of V, as he wanted her autograph on the special edition of the Codex released with that work. As the Keprian order has continued to expand and reveal deeper and more complicated levels of its teachings, the Codex has continued to grow since its first underground releases. A special edition written for the Order of the Strigo 7 was released as Book 2 of V October 2003 by VampireAlmanac.com in conjunction with Angel Publishing. An expanded, revised edition will be published by Viscera Books in the fall of 2004. This will be the definitive edition, featuring 108 individual sections broken up into divisions which address psychic vampirism, basic energy work, and advanced metaphysical techniques. The version below has come to be known as the Vampire Codex, Internet Edition, and is freely and widely shared with any and all interested parties. It is derived mainly from the 2000 Sanguinarium edition, although it includes a few sections originally left out of that published edition. The Keprian charge. We are the many born. We are the immortal. We have been known by many names throughout the ages, though few have understood the truth of our existence. Endlessly, we die and are reborn, changed yet unchanging throughout the ages. We move from lifetime to lifetime, taking up bodies as garments. We are watchers and we are wanderers. We seek knowledge and understanding above all. Long ago we strove asunder the life of our body from our roving minds, for it grounded us. It held us back. It bound us to a single span of days. Through a ritual of death and rebirth, we severed our living ties and gained immortality. Now we are freed of the life of the body, but we are irrevocably tied to the life we cut away. It sustains us and empowers us. We thirst for life and we feed upon it. It is our greatest weakness and our greatest prize. Two beginnings. Eternal, we wander the eons, moving to the rhythm of our own inner tides. Freed from the most fundamental of cycles, we are nevertheless beings bound by cycles. Our heightened awareness of ourselves and the world around us forces us to acknowledge natural rhythms that others simply ignore. As the day waxes and wanes, we can feel it, and we know that the true realm of magic is the night, for that is when we wax in power. As the moon grows gravid and slim, we feel it, and we know, too, that there are more complex rhythms of power tied to her phases. As the wheel of the year turns round, we feel the wild times, the apogees and nadirs of power. The dark time of the year is our time, as are the threshold times when we celebrate Samhain and Beltane. These days are our Keeperoo, the day of transformation, and our Sekemu, the day of double power. As beings poised on the threshold of many things, the energies of these holidays affect us profoundly. At these times we enjoy our greatest power, but in balance, we also pay a stronger price. Waves of energy rise and fall within us, and when in their grip, our hunger burns. Forever, we are active elements moving through passive worlds. Our rules are our own. We accept no others. We define who we are and what we shall become. There is nothing in our lives which we cannot control if we but choose to. Our memories are carried like gems within our souls. Over the lifetimes they build and crystallize until we can take them out and gaze upon them as we choose. Life sustains us, but death defines us. We are the many born. Our conception was in death, and each death now brings us a new beginning, forever without end. 3 catalysts of change. Everything we touch, we change. We take in energy constantly, and although this is how we feed, this energy is never destroyed. Through us, it is transformed. It changes states. It resonates to a higher level. Yet every birth is accompanied by struggle and pain. Every rebirth is just as painful. It may seem that we bring destruction, chaos, and turmoil to all those around us. And in a sense we do. But the changes are always for the better, even though the initial change may seem terrible. Change is terrible. It tears away what we've grown comfortable with. It destroys what we find familiar, stable, and simple, leaving uncertainty in its wake. But to face uncertainty and to thrive is to become stronger. Everything must change or die. We are active participants in this universal mystery. Every person that we come into contact with, no matter how casually, is altered. Wherever we go, change will follow. Our dynamic spirits stretch out all around us, and the wake we leave in our passing is like ripples on the ocean. Only the ripples we cause can become tidal waves. As beings on a threshold state, we are living embodiments of the dynamic complementarity that keeps the universe in constant motion. This is our burden. Yet this also is our purpose. In the grey area between 2 polar opposites lies revelation. We feed upon all around us. Yet we can also harness that energy to heal. We tear away and bring destruction, yet we also nurture new growth. This is our nature, the mystery of who we are. There is no rebirth without destruction. Light only blinds without shadow to throw it into relief. Understanding comes from balancing all these things within the self. We are that balance. We affect it, and it affects us. We are facilitators of the universal flow. We must accept this, and never fear to move with that flow. 4 awakenings. We are neither wholly born nor wholly made what we are. The choice for us to become was made long ago. From that time onward, we have been reborn again and again, carrying within us in every lifetime the seed of what we are. Sometimes we forget ourselves, and wander our lives like sleepwalkers, only half aware of our true natures. Yet sleeping or awakened, we are born with the potential for transformation. Awakening is a process of expanded awareness. Anyone with gifts and talents of a subtle nature undergoes an awakening in their life. This is when they come into their own, finally accepting what has been latent within them since birth. For us, the process can be traumatic, as the existence we awaken to opens us up to a host of strange thoughts, sensations, and experiences which lie outside the limits accepted even by other awakened. Awakening is the alchemical forge in which we are transformed from dross to spiritual gold. It is the recalling of a part of ourselves that has become clouded over time. It is becoming more than the little self of this lifetime, grasping the totality of who we were and who we are to be our essential self. Some of us have greater potential than others. Some are born with an instinctive understanding of their potential, and they may gradually come to realize that potential on their own. They recall without prompting, and their power is great. The bulk of our number are born ignorant to what they are. As they grow and mature, there are subtle hints of the latent power, but fear and self-doubt generally keep these from being acknowledged and accepted. Such as these must be awakened to their true selves by another of our number already familiar to our ways. There are 2 rituals of initiation. The lesser initiation is an exchange of feeding which occurs between the teacher and the initiate. The initiate is drained deeply, often for the first time. This heightens his awareness of his energy body and will often catalyze him into realizing his potential in the next few days. The sensations that this process inspires are usually too intense to ignore or explain away. If fed from deeply enough, his instincts will overcome him and he will feed from others in order to replenish his depleted system. The greater initiation involves a ritual death and rebirth which occurs on both the physical and spiritual levels for the initiate. It is visionary and shamanic in nature and forces the initiate to face himself and all that he has been within the boundaries of his own soul. Like all deaths and rebirths, this ritual strips away old identities and assumptions. The little self of this lifetime is subsumed into the greater self, and the initiate is irrevocably changed. This rite is reserved for only the strongest minds, for any who are weak or filled with fear may not survive the initiation. Their minds can be blown away like dry autumn leaves in the face of the totality of who they are. V. Potential. We often associate with the awakened or with those who hover upon the threshold of awakening. We prefer the company of those who can interact at least to some degree with the level of reality that is our constant daily experience. By our very natures we awaken those around us. Even those not of our kind can be affected by the transformative effects of our presence. We draw out latent powers and provide a burden of proof for individuals who have otherwise rejected their own natures due to self-doubt. We can use this intentionally if we choose, though it will always occur to some degree, whether intentional or not. Sometimes we mistake a potential of our own kind merely for one of the awakened. If such an unrecognized potential is fed from, the effect, though unintentional, is equivalent to the lesser initiation. The potential feels himself undergo a change and is driven to feed from others. Such accidents cannot be abandoned. Confused as to their true nature, ignorant of their power, they wield that power nonetheless and can cause much damage to themselves and others if left to struggle on their own. Still others have potential, but it is too weak to ever fully be realized in this lifetime. Others are too unstable to survive the initiation. They are best left to sleep so they will come to maturity in their own time. If forced to awaken, they are merely shadows of us weak in power, unstable in mind, whose powers are likely to fade unless constantly put to use or manipulated by their mentor. Sometimes a feeding vessel may manifest the symptoms of vampirism, but this is merely a sympathetic state brought about through prolonged or obsessive contact with one of our own. Such a one's natural reserves are depleted to a point where they cannot recover their vitality on their own. Given time, however, and separated physically and or emotionally from the dominating personality, such a person will gradually recover and return to a normal, non-vampiric state. In some cases, the afflicted person does not wish to give up the state of sympathetic vampirism. If the person understands even a little of what has happened to him and wants the condition to continue, he can maintain this quasi-vampiric state indefinitely and may even eventually come to be mistaken for one of our number as he will accept that he is nothing else. 6. Other awakened. There are many beyond ourselves who have the potential for power. They also undergo a process like our becoming which consists primarily of an expanded awareness and an awakening to their greater self. This commonly occurs with the onset of puberty, although it may happen later or earlier, depending on nature and circumstance. These are commonly referred to as the awakened. Their ways and their powers are diverse. Like us, many of the awakened follow a particular archetype. They use this archetype as a symbol to define themselves and their powers. They have a fundamental connection to the energy of this archetype, and although human in body, they are something more in spirit. Angels, witches, the Fae, Averkin, shifters, these are but a few of the archetypes that may be followed. Like ourselves, it may be that such individuals are responsible for inspiring much of the folklore that gave rise to the archetype in the first place, and now, in a less spiritually open time, they have only the buried grains of truth lingering in the folklore to fall back upon to define themselves. Like us, they are human and other. They are spiritual travelers who take up bodies as garments. We should always treat them with respect, for ultimately, we serve common goals. You will be attracted to the awakened in much the same manner that you are drawn to potentials of our kind. Much is unspoken and unconscious. Trust that your greater self is guiding you, for it knows and understands what may not always be accessible to your conscious mind. Like ourselves, the awakened can perceive and manipulate the many layers of reality. They call themselves by many names and they follow many diverse paths. Most of the awakened draw their power from the positive, generative forces of reality. Thus, they may fear us when they first encounter us. This fear arises from ignorance. Though we are darkness and they are light, we all work toward the same goal. We each in our way bring awareness to the world, catalyzing those with potential toward awakening. When we come upon one who is verging upon awakening, it is our duty to guide and instruct them. Do not mistake every awakened being for a potential of our kind. Nor should you attempt to push those not of our kind into accepting our ways and our arts. This way is not for everyone, and no one should ever be forced into following it. Be aware that some may resonate with more than one archetype, and these are the most difficult of all to identify and to educate. They may have much in common with us, but there will be limits to what we can explain and help them understand. In all cases, serve your function as a catalyst, helping them toward their path but not seeking to define that path for them. Ultimately, each person must walk their path alone. 7 Fledglings. You are responsible for teaching and guiding those of our kind whom you have awakened to their true natures. You must guide them through their transformation, helping to ease the transition from one level of awareness to the next. Those who you guide in this way will be as your children and will share a deep bond with you like no other. You will know their very heart and soul. The mysteries of their essential self will be unveiled to you. No distance will separate your awareness of them. The link goes both ways, and they can communicate with you and know your feelings when they choose. You may use the link to feed from them at a distance, to borrow their strength as your own. Their thoughts will be yours to know, their actions will fall under your control if you so choose, but do not seek to abuse this power you wield over them, for as dearly as they may love you and revere you while under your control, they will just as thoroughly hate and revile you once that control has slipped away. 8. The Beacon. Our kind has ways of recognizing its own. Often this recognition occurs on an unspoken level and is very subtle, so you must learn to trust your impulses and allow your greater self to guide you. Especially in the unawakened, this recognition manifests itself as a beacon which calls us to them so that they may realize their potential. The beacon calls to us on a very basic level, and often speaks purely to our unconscious minds. Thus we find ourselves inexplicably attracted to a potential, stricken with a sudden fascination for him and a need to draw him closer to us. If we listen to our perceptions and trust our instinctual reactions, we can refine this awareness of others until we can consciously pick out the beacon in those around us. Sometimes, even after such a refinement has been achieved, the beacon still slips past our conscious actions and we find ourselves simply responding to its unspoken pull. The pull of the beacon drives us to feed from the potential, thus awakening him to the most basic aspect of his hidden nature. We must learn to recognize the beacon in others, to judge its varying degrees of strength so that we may go about the awakening in a deliberate manner. We must learn to recognize when it is appropriate to awaken a potential and when that awakening will bring only grief to all involved. We must let our judgment rule us in this matter, and we must sometimes resist the merely instinctual pull of the beacon for awakenings that are not appropriate. Not all of those with potential are fit for the awakening, and if we act rashly we may unwittingly loose the beast of our destruction through a careless move. 9 Characteristics. The beacon is present to a limited degree in those who have already become. It is strong enough for us to recognize one of our number when we come into contact with him, even if this recognition is the barest hint of perception. We may also be known by our distinct auras, deep purple sometimes shot through with red, surrounded by a nimbus of black or grey mist. The outer layer often stretches into tendrils that extend far beyond our physical forms, reaching out and feeding from those around us. To those who can perceive that level of reality, we often appear to be a nexus of such tendrils. The tendrils are varying shades of grey, with a smooth, rope-like appearance. They are not perceptibly present in everyone. They can be filaments so fine even the most experienced seer will have difficulty perceiving them. We are often noted for our pallor, but more often it is the intensity of our eyes which gives us away. We tend to be thin with a powerful and often intimidating presence which wraps about us like a shroud. Our hands are often very cold. This is a cold which saps heat away, and lingers where it has been touched. It is a symptom of our constant, low-level energy draw. If we consciously channel energy through our hands, they grow very warm. It is not the temperature which is important, it is the responsiveness of our physical bodies to subtle effects that is distinctive. We are sensitive to strong odors and tastes, as our senses are often acute. Many of us can hear in a more than normal human range. Some of this is physical hearing, some may be limited clairaudience, as our subtle senses extend far beyond our physical selves. We are almost always much stronger and quicker than we look, for the body is merely a vessel for a much more powerful will. We are sensitive to light and to the excessive heat of the sun. This is symptomatic of our acute sensitivity to energy. The radiation of the sun is an overwhelming form of energy which our systems have trouble assimilating. Many of us burn very easily in the sun. Almost all of us are made sick by it. When required to be out in full daylight, we develop headaches, nausea, dizziness. The light saps us of our strength, leaving us exhausted and drained. The night is our natural dominion, for in the mythic imagination, it is the realm of secrets, of magic, and all that the day-lit world rejects. Detached and cold. We are often of a predatory nature, and with difficulty avoid using those around us. To most we seem unapproachable. There is an air about us which seems somehow to set us apart. Even those ignorant to our true natures react to this, treating us with respect, attraction or fear. The unawakened stare then look away from us and are unable to meet our gaze. They are disturbed by our presence but rarely will they understand what disturbed them or why. Instinctually, they fear us. The awakened will know us for what we are, though they may hesitate to put a name to it. Still, on an unspoken level they will understand and attempt to define us through the filters of their individual beliefs and symbol systems. Children will know us, though rarely do they fear. In their innocence, they have not yet learned to doubt, and thus are open to a clear perception of the world around them. Subtle body changes. To the awakened who can perceive energy or the subtle body, we may appear flawed or incomplete. This difference in our energy bodies can be mistaken as illness or disease. In truth, most of our kind partially or completely lack an energy center. This is most often the one located in the belly, just below the navel. It is because we lack this center that we need to feed, for our subtle bodies cannot sustain the energy necessary to maintain our physical forms. There is a schism between our body and our spirit, and while this schism places us in our threshold state, it creates weaknesses along with many benefits. Our physical connection to life is thin and weak. In those of our number who have not become, this may manifest itself in actual physical debility or illness. Severe allergies, immune system malfunctions, and other birth defects are not uncommon. If they gain awareness of their powers and at the very least learn how to feed, they may learn to compensate for these weaknesses. However, once you have learned to compensate, if you are unable to feed enough to sustain yourself, this weakness will return with greater severity than before. Often well-meaning awakened will offer to heal you so that you need not suffer the drawbacks associated with this lacking. Their efforts should be discouraged for they do not understand our nature. The absence of this center defines us as what we are and is carried over from lifetime to lifetime. It cannot and should not be fixed. In this respect, vampirism is a condition of the spirit, and it is the spirit which predisposes the body to physically manifest the characteristics associated with vampirism. Occasionally damage can be done to the subtle body of another that will partially or completely destroy an energy center. Such damage may be more permanent than the physical flesh, and thus will be carried over from lifetime to lifetime. This damage is most often the result of an accident, yet it produces much the same results as that which we embody. Those who have been damaged in this way will find that they need to feed. Their subtle bodies can no longer sustain their physical forms, and if life energy is not taken from an outside source, they will suffer debilitating effects associated with the lost or damaged energy center. Though these are not our children, they are technically of our number. It is our duty to help and guide them in understanding what has happened to them and what this may entail. There is, however, hope that such individuals will eventually heal on a subtle level, and thus recover from their state of vampirism. 11. Separateness. Our strength and our weakness is life. We depend upon the vital force, for lacking enough of it ourselves, we are forced to glean it from others. In this we are self-serving and self-preserving, though good and evil cannot be applied to our state. We know what we need, and we know we must take it, sometimes to the detriment of others. This is an unavoidable fact of reality. We are predators at heart, even though we are physically indistinguishable from our prey. The spirit within us sets us apart. Our perceptions, our passions, and our powers make us strangers among ordinary men. Even if we refuse to act upon our more destructive impulses, we keenly feel the difference between us and those who do not share what we are. No matter how hard we try to blend in, we can never truly belong. This is a blessing and a curse. The lives we live are fuller and more dynamic than anything most others might imagine. The levels of reality we are privy to make the world a profound and wondrous place. Yet there are few who can share our insights. Thus, we tend to be solitary, feeding alone, rarely interacting with those who would not and could not understand. Our utter separateness drives us to seek out companionship among our own kind, for it is here only that we find true acceptance and understanding. We may find friends and allies among the awakened, but they can never truly understand what we are and what that means within the context of so many different lives. There are some experiences they can neither accept nor share, and thus there is always something lacking when in their company. Thus we should always treasure those who are of our nature. They are our companions throughout the many, many long years. Time and again, we will find one another, for the bonds between us are never broken or worn thin. We can love and hate one another with great passion, yet we are forever loyal to our own. 12. Basic feeding. We may gain what we need through feeding, drawing in life as we would breath. When we are the center of attention of a whole group, we may feed upon the emotions of those around us as they are directed toward us. Those involved in the group are unlikely to notice the loss of energy, and oftentimes feeding in this way only increases their focus upon you. This is an activity many potentials engage in, though they do not often consciously understand what it is they do. This is one of the main reasons many potentials are drawn toward the stage. Many become actors, storytellers, musicians or other performers so that they may achieve the kind of focused attention they crave. For those who have become, this is a pleasing activity, but rarely satisfies more than the most superficial of needs. Even when a group is not focused upon us, we may feed generally upon them. No physical contact is necessary, we simply expand our awareness to encompass the group around us as if throwing out a net, or visualize ourselves at the center of a whirlpool, drawing everything in. Thus our energy extends beyond ourselves and, like embracing good friends, we pull bits of everyone about us into ourselves, breathing them deeply. This is less satisfying than a focused group draw but can sustain us in a time of desperate need when no other option is available. Places with high energy and many emotions are preferable for this activity, and thus we are often drawn to dance halls and clubs. Once again, This manner of feeding is subtle and easily overlooked, and those being fed from are unlikely to notice the loss. High energy places often have enough ambient energy floating loosely in the atmosphere that you are truly taking little from any of the individual people there. The two above techniques may be focused variably upon a single person for a slightly more intense effect. The individual in question does not have to be aware of your activities, and they do not even have to be close for you to feed from them. With concentration and focus, you can easily reach out across a room and draw off energy from a specific individual. At most, this person will feel a little tired from what you have taken, but most people are so desensitized to the subtle reality that they will pass this off as ordinary fatigue, stress, or too much drink. Taking from unawakened individuals has its drawbacks, however. Certainly there are more of them, and they are far less likely to notice what you are doing than awakened individuals. However, they are almost wholly ignorant to the energy that courses through them, and they do little or nothing to cultivate this aspect of their spiritual selves, and so the quality of their energy is very poor. Feeding from the awakened is far more rewarding, as they cultivate their energy bodies, and so the quality of energy is purer and more intense. However, feeding without permission from the awakened runs you the risk of getting caught. Many also perceive this as a psychic attack, and your actions will rarely be responded to kindly. To this end, willing partners are the most advisable, as they will not retaliate for anything which they consider an infringement on their person. Having a willing partner who is awakened is more fulfilling anyway, since the more feedback you receive from your targets, the more satisfying the drain, especially if they have some awareness of what is happening to them. It is like making love. The best partner is the one who responds to your touch, whose reactions guide you in increasing their experience of the exchange. Single target, long-distance draws are convenient for establishing a connection to someone in order to draw them closer to you, but before it is socially appropriate to engage in actual physical contact. In general, energy coupled with some strong emotion is more fulfilling than simple energy alone. One of the most intense emotions we can feed upon is fear, but the negative repercussions associated with inspiring this emotion make it inadvisable to pursue. The next most intense emotion is passion or ecstasy, and this can be very fulfilling for both you and your partner. Any emotion that is transformative in its power and depth pleasantly satisfies our needs. We may also feed upon energy gathered for religious purposes. This will sustain us in a time of need when no other sources are available, though often it is meager fare. When people gather to worship, they generate a strong force of energy, but few, if any of them, ever know how to properly direct it. Thus it curls up like smoke directionlessly through their place of worship, or clings around those items which served as the foci for the group's attentions. Whether we sit in on the actual worship or appear shortly thereafter, we may effect a general draw using the net technique, which pulls the undirected energy into ourselves. The objects which were focused upon by the crowd can also be drained of the energy endowed in them, either from a distant, general draw or from the more direct drain of physical contact. Many find such activities scandalous and unforgivable, but in truth the groups that can be preyed upon in this fashion have little awareness that they have been victimized and suffer not from our predations. The energy of their worship was undirected anyway and would dissipate eventually on its own, having served to benefit no one. 13. Breath and life. We can adequately feed from a distance, extending our subtle bodies and our wills beyond the limits of our physical bodies in order to touch the energies of others. Such techniques can be satisfying in their own right, yet we are not solely beings of energy. We are a balance of spirit and matter, as are all things, and so contact with more than just energy bodies is necessary for us to feel truly satisfied. Physical contact coupled with that extension of ourselves that creates energy contact is the main method used to feed. The primary centers for achieving such contact are our hands and our mouths. The hands may tingle when used for this purpose. Our touch at this time is intense, often very cold but also shiveringly pleasant. As we draw forth more energy, the cold gives way to warmth, which in turn gives way to heat. The heat is a byproduct of the energy exchange. In extreme cases, we may leave traces of our feeding, even when feeding solely with our hands. We can draw blood up through the very pores or leave barely discernible bruises at our points of contact. We draw energy in like breath. This is a controlled breathing technique which encompasses much more than our lungs. Even when the primary focus is our hands or if our target is far removed from us physically, this breathing helps focus our intake of energy. It is one slow, sustained inhalation, almost like smoking a cigarette or sucking air through a very small straw. If done correctly, it will seem that you are breathing in far beyond the capacity of your lungs. Like breath, energy is drawn in, filling us with life and vitality. You will feel it, like a rush, spread through you, tingling down to your fingers and toes. You will achieve an altered state of consciousness while doing this, where body and energy body are both clearly perceived. Time may seem drawn out and distance will be altered. Your perceptions can expand to encompass a whole room, seeing everything inside and out all at once. Like breath, energy may also be expelled, exhaled into the person you choose to give it to. This secondary function of drawing energy is used in healing. It is the necessary counterbalance to our function of taking energy. We are creatures of balance above all else, and even as we can sap the energy of those around us, so too can we build it up in order to help and heal. 14. Assimilating energy. When we feed, we must take the life energy of others. It cannot be given. It can be offered freely, but still we must do the taking. This is fundamental to the way in which we must process the energy for use ourselves. When we draw in energy from another, it is transformed through the feeding process into energy we can assimilate and use. If another, however well-meaning, seeks to force energy into us, it will do us little good. The energy must be assimilated to match our own if we are to benefit from it. It is very difficult for us to assimilate any energy beyond that of life. Others may draw their strength from the earth, the elements, even the stars, but we are bound to life by our lack of it. Some of us are more disconnected from life than others, and this is reflected in what and how much we can feed from in order to sustain ourselves. Few of us can feed from alternate sources, but when we can, it is a blessing which should not be ignored. 15. Blood and life. Do not mistake mere blood for life. We feed upon something far subtler. However, do not be surprised if, in feeding, you taste blood within your mouth, for blood and life are intricately interwoven. We are creatures of both matter and spirit, and thus we affect others on both of these levels. Blood is the physical substance of life, and so we are bound ever so slightly to this material expression of our spiritual need. Do not be misled by the juxtaposition of energy and blood. No cut or puncture is necessary for the transfer to occur. Our ways are far subtler than that. As you draw out life, you draw out a minute amount of blood with the life. Even when there is no physical contact between you and your partner, when the draw is deep enough, this will occur. For this reason, always take care in who you feed from, for a taint in their blood may carry over to you. Never feed from the ill or diseased. Never feed from those who have drugs or alcohol in their system unless you wish to partake of their intoxication for yourself. The taints in their bodies will transfer over to you. You will know those who are tainted by the sensations you get when near them. You will have an instinctual aversion to touching or getting close to such people. Likewise, your senses will warn you if you attempt to initiate a draw. Much of your awareness of the taint will occur on an unspoken level, so be attentive to your impressions and intuitions. Given time and careful observation, you will learn to discern these sensations in order to identify the taint. This knowledge, however, may bring you great grief, for there are few left in this world who are not tainted in one manner or another. And those that preceded them, this center was known as the ache. The ache is the immortal body, that which contains our undying, essential selves. This energy center is the point at which the immortal body crosses over with the physical form. The next center is located at the throat, and is accessible from the mouth or the sides of the throat over the veins. This is known as the khu. The khu is the voice and will of an individual. It is the seat of individual determination and magical power, for it is through the word that our wills are enacted. The next center is located above the heart. This is the AB. It is accessible directly above the heart, between the breasts. The AB is the center of the physical being, where the physical stuff of life is circulated throughout the organism. It is a very powerful center of raw life energy. The AB is the dynamic opposite of the BA. Where the AB is the center of the physical life force, with the heart and all its pumping blood, the BA is the center of the spiritual life force and serves much the same function as the heart, with circulating and directing the subtle life energies. When doing energy work or doing visualizations, it will seem that the center of power is located in the chest, just beneath the very base of the sternum. This is the KA. It is the dynamic opposite of the ache, so that where the ache is the immortal, higher soul, the KA is the body soul, tied to the needs and hungers of the physical form. It is here that a strong sensation can be felt during feeding. The KA is interlinked with the very capacity to feed. It is the seat of the spiritual hunger, as well as the bridge between the subtle energy and the point in the body where this is drawn in and made useful. The BA is located in the belly, just beneath the navel. The BA is the center of the spiritual life force. By its action, it sustains the life of the subtle body and connects the subtle body to the physical, transitory form. It is further the tie which connects us to the wheel of death and rebirth. Altering or severing this center completely will affect the way in which the soul travels through the wheel. Most other energy traditions such as yoga describe this center as the seat of the subtle power. It is this area just beneath the navel that a yogi is trained to focus on when gathering power. For us, this center is significantly altered. Many of us are disconnected from it partially or entirely. Our center, as a result, is higher, and lies in the KA. Finally, there is a center at the root. This is the men, the sexual force. This center is most completely tied to the body and is the dynamic opposite of the khu. Where the khu is the word and will, this is the instinct, that which has the power to rob us of our wills and transform us into beasts. This center is accessible through the genitals or just inside the joint of the thigh. Minor centers exist at the wrists, the insides of the elbows and the backs of the knees. The palms of the hands and the soles of the feet also contain minor chakras. Any of these can be used to create a connection, although we are hardly bound to reach out to another's energy body through these sites. Any physical contact will do, and as mentioned before, even physical contact is not necessary to feed. 17 more on feeding. Our energy actually pierces the subtle body of our partner and penetrates it, drawing energy out as if through a straw. Afterward, a wound is left in the aura of the partner, though this will close on its own in a few days. It can sometimes be echoed in the flesh in the form of a small rounded bruise. In the case of long-standing partners, the wound can become a permanent weak spot in the aura through which we can easily penetrate and gain access to their energy. Generally speaking, feeding is not harmful to the partner. They have a connection to the universal force. This will replenish them in time, usually overnight. Most partners will just feel a little tired and fuzzy-headed after being fed from. Many have described it like a mild drug, something that is pleasantly mellowing. Some experience euphoria during feeding and feel they are riding intense waves of pleasure. Others can achieve an altered state of consciousness with intense dream-like visions. Feeding partners may be a little hypersensitive to bright light afterwards, and they may experience a sudden feeling of cold. They may be a little more tired than usual the next morning, and they may have a headache that is much like a hangover. However, under ordinary circumstances, these are the most severe side effects feeding will produce in a partner. Some caution should be used when feeding from those who are not accustomed to it, however. If fed from too quickly or too deeply, the partner may experience difficulty in breathing. Irregularities in the heartbeat may follow. The partner's body will tingle all over, though this may quickly give way to feelings of numbness and cold. Some find this pleasant. To others, it is alarming. It may become very difficult for the person to move and the limbs will feel heavy and uncoordinated. In very extreme cases, the partner will experience a general depression of the entire sympathetic nervous system. This includes lowered body temperature, lowered blood pressure, slowed heart rate, and a general lassitude which may manifest itself in extreme cases as an all-over muscular weakness and trembling or partial paralysis. When fed from extremely deeply, it is almost guaranteed that a partner will partially or completely lose consciousness. Do not panic if this occurs. Make certain that they are in no immediate danger, and if they seem to be breathing all right, just let them sleep it off. With their connection to the universal life force, there is very little permanent damage you can do to someone by overfeeding, so long as you do not make it a habit to do so. Consistent overfeeding will evoke in the partner symptoms similar to those which we experience during periods of starvation. The continual shortage of energy will begin to tax the immune system. They will be tired all the time, sickly and weak. They may sleep a great deal, or they may find themselves unable to actually sleep despite their overwhelming lethargy. Putting constant demands upon one partner will eventually put them in a position where their system can no longer compensate for the loss of energy fast enough to meet your needs. This is why it is always wise to have at least one other reliable source which you can feed from. The best strategy to keep you and all those close to you healthy is to have 2 or 3 partners which you feed from, rotating through them so that no single one of them must bear the full weight of your needs. A draw can be enacted in conjunction with tantric magic. Your primary contact is made at the mouth or the throat, and a tendril is inserted into the subtle body of your partner. Through intense visualization, this tendril is guided down through your partner's subtle body to the root chakra. Here the Kundalini energy that is so crucial to Tantra lies coiled. You can grasp onto the Kundalini energy and manually pull it up through each successive chakra. Draw in only a little during this process until the drawing up of the energy is complete. Once you have brought the Kundalini through all the chakras to your primary point of contact, you will have generated an immense amount of energy from which both yourself and your partner can benefit. You and your partner will sense something like an explosion of light and energy within yourselves, followed immediately by a bursting sensation as if you had just been pushed through some barrier. This will consummate in a powerful sense of climax on the subtle level. Feeding in this manner is very productive, as it serves to energize both yourself and your partner. Your partner will almost invariably experience a prolonged and impressive orgasm, and one may feed upon the torrent of energy that results from the climax to increase mutual stimulation. It is almost impossible to exhaust a partner when feeding from the root, whereas prolonged or deep feeding from any of the other major energy centers can cause trembling, weakness, dizziness, and an overall depression of the system. Feeding from the root seems to only increase that which you feed upon. The partner, after recovering from the intensity of the drain, is almost always energized, and while they still feel the effects of physical exhaustion, they are driven by a fevered desire that can sustain them for hours. The process is very difficult to master, however, and if the coil of Kundalini energy slips from your grasp, you will simply end up initiating a deep feed from all the chakras in succession. 19. Dream walking. Remember, we can feed through a touch, but our spirits extend far beyond the limits of our body. Long-distance draws that are just as intimate and intense as feeding flesh to flesh can be achieved. When you are starved for energy and no opportunity to adequately sate your needs has arrived, you may find that you will send yourself out in dreams. This is much like astral travel, although it is largely an unconscious activity. You will dream of someone close to you. This can be a family member, a good friend, a current or a former lover. This person need not be located physically close to you, as the subtle reality does not know distance as we know it in the physical world. Your body may be confined to your bedroom, yet your dream self may wander hundreds and even thousands of miles away. The dream will seem unusually vivid. It is very likely that the dream will also be lucid, and you will realize at least in part that you are dreaming, but that this other person is somehow actually present in the dream. In the course of the dream, you will have an exchange with the target person. The exchange can be overtly vampiric, or it may manifest itself in an erotic context. The person who you have visited this way will wake up tired and worn just as if you had fed directly from them that night. Often, they will recall the dream as well, and if it is possible to compare experiences, you will find that certain elements of the dreamscape were shared by both people involved in the dream. With practice, you will come to be able to distinguish between your ordinary dreams and these dream-walking experiences. The process does not always have to be unconscious. You may gain mastery over this ability and dream walk at will. However, it remains a survival technique inherent in the vampiric nature. Therefore, especially in periods of dire need, you may find your soul wandering regardless of your personal control. XX choosing donors. In crowds or when performing a general, long-distance drain, it is nearly impossible to assure that your victims are willing. When physical contact is not involved or when the drain is weak enough, such consent is unnecessary. However, when you feed deeply upon someone, especially through physical contact, it is advisable that you make certain your partner understands what is being done to them so that they know the risks and cannot blame you for invading their person. Lying and dissembling to someone you must be so close to will only make their reaction to you all the more violent when and if they discover your true nature. This requires us to choose our long-term feeding partners with great care. Casual feeding is discouraged as too many partners may gossip and eventually learn what you have done to them by comparing notes. 2 or 3 regular partners are suggested, so you may establish strong links with them and rotate them as the need arises, so no single one is exhausted by your demands. Our partners ideally must be awake enough to understand and accept what we are, or else our explanation of what we do to them will be met only with scorn and incredulity. You must carefully build a relationship up with a prospective partner, sounding out their beliefs until you feel comfortable in entrusting them with the truth of what you are. If you cannot feel comfortable in telling them what you do to them, you should not use them as a regular feeding partner. We must select partners who are emotionally strong and mentally stable. Those who are versed in the arts of the subtle reality are preferable. The bond that we must share with someone in order to feed deeply from them is profound indeed. It encompasses all levels of being, physical, spiritual, mental, and emotional, and it can be more than most ordinary folk can safely handle. Our lovemaking and often even our casual contact touches them profoundly on a more than physical level. Even for those who have had some experience with the subtle reality, this is something they have probably never experienced before and will never experience with any partner save ourselves. For some, this is too much. It ruins them for everything else. They can easily become obsessed with us, and especially they will become obsessed with what we can do to them. Such an obsession is unhealthy for them as well as for us. Thus, we must give our love carefully and diligently watch those whom we are close to for signs of instability so we may protect them from the destruction our nature inevitably wreaks. XXI the kiss and the curse. We do not bring only pain and loss to those we feed upon. The experience of our touch on levels far deeper than the physical can be transformative to those strong enough to bear up under it. Let others condemn us, call us evil or perverse, but let them never speak of love or an understanding of it. For we love and share with one another in ways so profound that those not of our number have never imagined it before. Ours is the kissing of souls, unburdened by the limitations of physical flesh. Ours is the deepest knowing of another soul. Ours is the truest communion. Those we feed upon experience waves of ecstasy, like riding the crest of a prolonged orgasm, though one which is not located specifically in the flesh. Our draw is like a drug. Our partners are overcome with a soothing sensation, until they relax to their very core. They feel they are drifting in an ocean of pleasure. They are filled with a golden, melting sensation that is almost narcotic in its intensity. Our draw can bring visions, and it can bring rest and sleep even to the most restless of souls. The pleasure we give is not wholly physical but occurs upon all levels, and serves to bridge the space between these levels of existence in our partners, raising them up into an apotheosis of self. Our touch is mystical, and it changes our partners profoundly on levels they may only have imagined. Like a drug, however, our draw can be addictive. We understand too well the overpowering desire our need inspires in us, but our partners can also come to be reliant upon the pleasure that we give to them. They can become trained to be responsive to our touch, and their physical and subtle bodies can grow so accustomed to our drain that they overproduce vitality in anticipation of having it drained away. Thus we must always take care in how often we feed from our partners, and try to guard against obsessing them with the pleasure that we give to the exclusion of all else. XXII Subtle links. Each time you feed from someone, you forge a subtle link with them. This link is like an astral tentacle or a silver cord. It connects your subtle body to their subtle body. Every time you feed from this person after forging the initial link, you make this link stronger and deeper. The link can also be strengthened simply through casual contact with the person, so whenever you come together socially the link is reinforced bit by bit. This link serves as a constant connection to the person. Through it, you can sense where they are, what their emotional state is, and if they are in any physical danger or distress. The deeper and stronger the link, the easier it is to travel down it in order to sense the person on the other end. Through a strong link, you will be able to pick up stray thoughts in addition to emotions. You will also be able to implant suggestions and emotions. By tugging gently on the link with the person, you can make them think of you and draw them to you. With concentration, an especially strong link will enable you to extend your awareness completely enough so you are able to perceive through the other person's senses. 23 Feeding through links. Once a link is forged with someone, you may use the link to feed from them at a distance. The deeper and stronger the link, the more efficiently you can draw energy through it. With most such connections, you do not even have to concentrate to draw forth from the person. To a certain extent, you are in constant contact with that person, and while the energy you gain from them passively is only minimal, a number of such connections with various people will help sustain you in times of need as well as prolong the time you can go between more active feedings. If you choose to actively drain through a link, there are two good ways of doing so. First, you can simply concentrate on pulling some of that person's energy to you through the link. Center yourself. Focus on your connection to that person, then visualize the person clearly. Visualize yourself reaching out and touching them to feed, then breathe in, drawing in energy as well as breath. You may also extend yourself down through the link, initiating a deeper contact with their energy body as you do so. This is a more direct way of feeding from those you have subtle connections to, and it is also much more obvious to the person on the other end. As before, concentrate upon the person and get a clear image of them in your head. Then focus on extending your subtle senses to that person, much as you would if you chose to see through their eyes or perceive their emotional state. When you are successfully focused on them, it will seem you are in two places at once. Part of you will be sitting or standing wherever your body is, and you will retain some awareness of these surroundings. Part of you will be focused entirely upon the other person and will feel as if it occupies the same space that they do, or is somehow enveloped around them. Once this has occurred, you may initiate a drain, pulling their energy in through your breath as you had done before. The target of such a drain is likely to become aware of it at least on a semi-conscious level. They may suddenly find themselves thinking of you for no reason they can explain. They may smell your perfume or catch sight of you out of the corner of their eye. If they are asleep, they may see you enter their dreams. This is a lot like conscious dream walking. The technique behind it is largely the same. Sensitive targets may actually perceive your presence, seeing you, ghost-like, hovering somewhere nearby. Of all the things we can do, this has historically frightened people the most. It serves as the basis for all the myths and legends of demonic and vampiric nightly visitations. As such, it is the most revealing of our nature, and it will quickly expose you to those it happens to. For this reason, this skill should be exercised cautiously and with great discretion. Manipulating links. Links can also be used to control the people on the other end. Just as you can receive emotions and scraps of thoughts through a strong link, so too can you send these things down the link to your target. Thus you can influence your target's emotional state and even implant suggestions for certain attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors in his unconscious mind. You can also use the link to focus an attack upon your target. Instead of sending benign thoughts and emotions down the link, you may send negatively charged energy, such as impressions of pain, despair, or depression. You may also use your ability to feed through a link as an attack, mercilessly draining energy until your target's reserves are seriously depleted. You can also picture the link as a tendril of yourself that enters them somewhere at their core. Extending the visualization, you can reach out and yank on this tendril, as if trying to uproot it. The connection is often too deep for anything to actually tear or sever it, so the force you visualize is transferred to them. They will feel something in the center of their being pulling and tearing down to their core. The severity of this sensation and the damage it does depends upon the force with which it is done, as well as how deep the connection goes. You may also tug upon a link in order to draw a person to you. Visualize the person clearly and send them images of you. Pull them toward you and at the same time, send the distinct impression that they should contact you soon. If they are too far to come directly to you, they are likely to email or call. If they are able to come directly to you, they probably will within the course of a few days. XXV Cautionary Notes. When you forge a connection with someone, always keep in mind that the link goes both ways. A target, if aware of their link to you, can trace it in much the same way you can trace it to them. If the person you have forged a connection with is awakened, they can do many of the same things through the link that you can. If they become aware of the connection, they can use it to contact you, send emotions or thoughts to you, or even to attack you. The link can thus be used to find you and to harm you, so it is best to manipulate such connections with caution and discretion so that those on the other end either remain ignorant to their existence or have no cause to resent your connection to them. Once forged, however, a link can never be completely severed. They can be worn down to a bare filament, but even these threads can be used with effort. Once you have a connection to someone, it will always be there. For this reason, if no other, always choose who you will feed deeply from with great caution, for you will always carry a part of them with you, and it can be used to bring you harm. XXVI The caste system. All of us exist upon a threshold. This is what makes us what we are, and what allows us the command over energy and the subtle reality that comprises the bulk of our powers. We walk in two worlds at once, and although the bodies we have are but mortal, the spirit within is vast and eternal. Each of us differs in the quality and quantity of energy we require to sustain us. The depth of our need is influenced by the strength of the connection between our bodies and our souls. Those of us who are more connected to our bodies need to take in less energy from those around us unless we are engaged in very draining spiritual work. Those who are balanced more on the spirit side of the threshold tend to enjoy greater powers and sensitivities, but their need for vital spirit is also increased. Where on the threshold one falls affects not only the quantity and quality of energy required, but also what skills may be learned, what talents will be inborn, and how one's nature will manifest itself. It is crucial to understand these matters and how they affect the individual, especially in a potential or in one who is verging upon awakening. The caste system is an attempt to simplify the various threshold states. The castes are guidelines for understanding ourselves, our basic natures, and the role we play in our community. Although loosely based upon an ancient social system, The castes are not intended to become a hierarchy or social structure in this day and age. That time has long gone by. Instead, use the castes as what they are intended to be, guidelines for personal understanding which will hopefully explain some of the mysteries of why one person processes energy one way, and someone else has a very different experience and approach. Keep in mind that the caste system is very limited. There are but 3 archetypes offered here, and not everyone will fit neatly into any of them. It is far more likely that each person will find within themselves qualities of 2 or more. We have been through many lifetimes, and our souls have grown and changed. We have learned much, and most of us have come a long way from what we once were. Discovering the caste that describes you the best may hold the key for understanding your basic nature and how to proceed in awakening to it, but use the caste solely as a tool. Do not try to become something you are not, and do not allow yourself to chafe beneath an archetype that does not suit you. In the end, you are you, with all your complexities and contradictions, and no simple word will ever be found to encompass all of these. Xxae priests. Those of our number who are most disconnected from the physical side of the threshold have the greatest range of sensitivity and power at their disposal, but they suffer the greatest weaknesses. They are few in number and many have not survived the passing millennia as their disconnectedness from the flesh can often lead them to reside purely in spirit. The demands of the balance they struggle to maintain while in the flesh are extreme, and over the years, it has taken its toll. These individuals are our priests, and they often command the greatest respect for the level of awareness they can attain. The priest's physical body is inextricably linked to his psychical well-being. If his power begins to wane and he approaches need, his health will suffer, for he can no longer compensate for the lost energy center in his subtle body. Need, especially deep need, can be physically debilitating for one of this caste, and if left to go too long without feeding, they can be reduced to invalids, hollow shells of what they could be. Priests are very sensitive to the changing cycles. Much of their power wanes during the day, then waxes full with the approach of night. They suffer the most under direct light and must take pains to avoid sunstroke. Their systems are sensitive to most complex foods, especially when in deep need. Of all our kind, their physical bodies are the most concretely affected by their spiritual state. Thus, they are the most likely of our number to be recognized for what they are, for their nature manifests itself in very physical ways. The priest requires a greater quantity and a finer quality of energy than any other of our number. He, more so than any other, is constantly pulling energy into himself. This occurs on an unconscious, instinctive level, and though it can be consciously dampened, it cannot be shut off completely. However, even this constant draw will not sustain the priest unless coupled with conscious feeding. Priests are the only of our number that must feed deeply on a regular basis. This entails feeding from the energy at the very core of another rather than simply skimming energy from their surface. This is a draw which encompasses all of the energy centers at once, and can leave the partner burned, suffering extreme effects of energy loss, the next day. Because they stand upon the threshold between matter and spirit, the priests have access to the greatest range of powers inherent in our kind. However, priests run the risk of being mentally or emotionally unstable because of the strain such power puts on their systems. They must develop strong egos and indomitable wills in order to bear up under the burden of their power, but this may lead them to become domineering, arrogant, and obsessed with control. Moderation as well as control are the 2 rules a priest must live by. With great power comes great responsibility, and those of the priestly caste who do not understand or respect this doctrine will end up bringing harm to both themselves and others. A priest must feed carefully, always drawing away before feeling completely satisfied. He must never give in to the urge to pull all of his partner into himself, to devour for the sake of devouring. Priests hold the power of life and death, sanity and madness over their partners, and they must recognize this power and use it responsibly. The priest's way must ever be the way of balance. He must sacrifice satiation for the safety of the partner. He must accept physical weakness and pain in exchange for the ability to manipulate the subtle energies of all around him. He must accept the pull of his constant need in exchange for the ability to feed upon his partners in so profound a manner that he will come to grasp and understand their very essence. Sate counselors. The counselors, of all our kind, retain the strongest connection to life. Though they have access to most of the powers inherent in our kind, they suffer only mildly from our traditional drawbacks. They are less sensitive to light and the natural cycles as other priests, and their flesh only rarely seems abnormally cold. They are also less likely to be recognized for what they are. Their subtle natures may influence their physical bodies, but such manifestations are often far subtler than those of a priest. Counselors do not have to feed unless regularly fed upon, though they often grow accustomed to feeding upon others for the pleasure it gives. If they are ill or overextending themselves on a subtle level, counselors will also deplete their energy enough to make feeding a necessity. Even so, they suffer only mild symptoms of withdrawal when forced to go without energy for an extended period of time. Ceasing to feed altogether is rarely debilitating to them. Once they overcome the mental and physical addiction, they can lead a relatively ordinary life, if that is their choice. A counselor can go his entire life without awakening to his true nature. There may be hints of it and he may have access to a few subtle powers, but unless he is fed upon, he is unlikely to ever need to feed in an overt fashion. If an unawakened counselor feeds at all, it is only superficially, usually through intimate contact with friends and lovers. They can get all they need through touching or even through general non-contact draws. Even once they have been fed upon, counselors rarely, if ever, experience deep need, tending to skim energy from the surface of their partners. Counselors are often very sensual people, as their need for energy is answered through close personal contact with others. The sensual nature of their spirit is often reflected in their physical form, so that counselors tend to be attractive in body, lithe and fine-boned. Male or female, there is a compelling, seductive quality about them that transcends gender. Many find themselves attracted to vocations of entertainment, and are gifted in music, the arts, and dance. Counselors find it extremely pleasurable to be fed upon. Their systems adapt readily to the demands of feeding, producing energy to match the needs of their partner. Once a counselor has adapted to a regular routine of being fed from, he will grow uncomfortable when that routine is broken. Physical discomfort, mental distraction, irritability, and hyperkineticism may result from an overabundance of energy if such a counselor is not fed from regularly. Counselors, like priests, tend to be mentally or emotionally unstable, especially when their energy is out of balance. They also tend toward obsessiveness, especially when it comes to feeding, sensation, and pleasure. 6 Warriors. The warrior caste in some ways may seem less powerful than even the counselors, but one of their benefits is that their true strengths are hidden. Their powers tend to manifest themselves in a very physical nature, allowing them to consciously augment their natural strength, stamina, and speed. In body, they tend to be broad-shouldered and rugged, with a natural propensity for various martial arts. They can also consciously enhance their healing so they recover almost completely from the most grievous of wounds. Warriors are typically less sensitive to the subtle reality than either priests or counselors, although they can achieve sensitivity with effort. Mainly, this desensitized state is brought about by a thick wall which protects them from the energy of others. It is a kind of psychic armor that is kept in place instinctually and without any thought or effort. It may be hard to recognize the potential in a warrior because of this armor, as it tends to keep their energy in as well as keeping other energies out. Do not mistake the wall for spiritual thick-headedness, however. Like the rocky crust of a volcano, the warrior's armor hides a volatile and immensely powerful force within. Once a warrior has learned to tap this force, they are a power to be reckoned with. Warriors almost always excel at warcraft, having an instinctive knowledge of weapons and their handling. They are often remarkable strategists and tacticians. This results from the sum of their memories and skills gained in previous lives. This remembering can be called forth consciously, but is always present and ready to be drawn upon on an unspoken level. A warrior's inherent physical prowess tends to make him restless in this world. He can easily feel caged and oppressed by the edicts of society, and his wasted talents have a danger of spilling out into undirected aggression. In terms of feeding, the needs of a warrior are much like those of a counselor. Casual physical contact or even long-distance draws are all they ordinarily require to fill their needs. Unlike counselors, warriors tend not to get lost in feeding for its own sake, and they are very resistant to being fed from. An unawakened warrior tends to instinctively make use of his physical powers. Especially in times of trauma and distress, these abilities will come to him without a conscious effort. Extensive use of his latent powers will drive an unawakened warrior to feed. This process can occur unconsciously, often in a group draw, but it may serve to awaken the warrior to his true nature. Warriors suffer from the traditional drawbacks of our kind. They are bound more strongly to the cycles than other counselors, though they are not as limited by these cycles as the priests. They are sensitive to bright light and their reaction to food will wax and wane according to their energy levels. When their energies are very low and they do not feed to replenish them, warriors will require a greater quantity of food to sustain themselves, but this will rarely satisfy. It may even make them sick. Of all the castes, the warriors store the greatest portion of energy. This is energy not meant to be fed from, but energy which can be directed through their will and their rage. Although it takes a good deal to delve deep enough into the warrior to reach his hidden reserves, once this wellspring is tapped, the power and intensity of the output is immense. XXX Subtle Reality Basics. Our greatest power, that which sustains us and defines us as what we are, is our ability to manipulate energy. By extending our energy beyond ourselves, we are able to manipulate the energies of others even over great distances. First, we must become aware of our own energies. We must know our subtle body, its strengths and limitations. We must have a clear picture of our subtle being in our minds so that we are better able to manipulate that subtle body to affect the world around us. We must remember that thought is energy, and what we imagine and consciously visualize will have an effect upon the world around us. We manipulate our own energy bodies through visualization, directing our energies according to our will. The main foci for the manipulation of energy are our mouths and our hands. The mouth and the hands are our tools. The way we manipulate these tools is through breath, visualization, and will. Our breath combines our physical and subtle bodies in a unified stream of life/air. By inhaling in such a way as to breathe with more than just our lungs, we take energy in. By exhaling in such a way as to utilize both our physical and subtle bodies, we expel energy. Visualize the energy as light which rides upon the breath. It is a softly glowing liquid that flows around and through all things. When we breathe, we drink this in. It gathers in our center, below the heart in our ka. With the touch of our hands, with the kiss of our lips, or with the concentrated intent to touch over a distance, all coupled with breath, we can pull energy out of others or breathe it into them in a healing stream. In order to more efficiently take energy out of another or to put it in, we must extend beyond breath. Using the stream of the breath as a focus, visualize a tendril of the subtle body moving toward and inserting itself into the target. Once a connection is made, the sense of it is unmistakable. Do not let doubt or worry distract you, but retain your focus on the visualization and the breath. It is best to think of this tendril not as something which moves through ordinary space or ordinary physicality. It is powered by the breath and the breath focuses and directs it, yet it cannot be found physically in the stream of the breath. It is an extension of our wills and our imaginations, and thus exists on a level of pure energy. Think of the world as a double exposure. The clearest part of the photograph is the physical, material world. This is what the majority of humanity mistakes for the sum total of reality. But there is a translucent ghost image that is laid on top of and throughout the other. In truth, they are inextricably woven together. It is this quasi-reality through which our subtle bodies move, and it is the other objects and forces in this quasi-reality that our subtle bodies interact with and influence. Think of yourself as existing in both of these realities at once. Be aware of the material universe around you, but at the same time be aware of the shadow reality that is woven throughout it. Know that you can affect and be affected by both. In the subtle reality, the physical boundaries of things and people are not necessarily fixed. By moving parts or all of your subtle body in this aspect of reality, you can pass over great distances as if they were nothing, for in truth, here all points exist as one point. You can move inside a living body, perceiving the organs and internal functions as if they were laid open before you, down to a microscopic level. In the subtle reality, you can see past the ordinary boundaries of things with a sense that is more impression coupled with insight. Actual physical sight is only an analogy here, a metaphor for perceiving on a deeper level. However, as you are more accustomed to physical sight, you are most likely to interpret your impressions of this aspect of reality in terms of images and vision. You cannot only perceive things in the subtle reality, but you can influence them as well. You can take things out of a living body and you can put things in, provided the objects and forces you are manipulating have their origin in the subtle reality through which you move. These things will not be real in the physical or material sense, for they exist on the level of pure energy. However, if they are strong enough, they can ultimately have a tangible effect on the physical reality, for the two are merely different aspects of the same thing. XXXI augmentation. All of the abilities and powers inherent to our kind are almost solely fueled by energy. Mastery of these powers requires an understanding of one's own energy as well as the ability to visualize that energy on the subtle level. The more advanced powers require the ability to manipulate the subtle body in order to perceive and interact with the subtle reality. With determination and practice, all of our kind regardless of caste have the potential to learn and master any of the following skills. The first and most basic thing we can do is physical augmentation. Augmentation uses our energy to influence our physical bodies. Augmentation allows us to push beyond our physical limitations through a concentrated act of will. To augment, you must extend your awareness only slightly to the energy coursing through your body. Focus is essential. Gather the energy into your center, just under your heart chakra, then force it throughout yourself with a specific intent. In this way you may will a burst of strength or a burst of speed, you may increase your endurance, your pain tolerance, and even the rate at which you heal. Through concentration of your will and your energy, you can heighten your senses of touch, taste, hearing, and so forth. A limited amount of increased sensual acuity comes without thought. All senses are affected in this way, though scent, taste, and touch are the most noticeably keener. With practice, augmentation will come naturally, without a conscious effort, and may be kept up for extended periods of time. However, augmenting for extended periods tends to burn the system out very quickly, so that one must feed more heavily and more often in order to compensate. The same concept can be applied to pushing yourself beyond the limits of physical infirmity or disease. Many of us are sickly, because the connection between the physical and the spiritual bodies is disjointed or incomplete. Yet we can overcome whatever our physical limitations may be with a concentrated effort of will. As with augmentation, focus is essential, and compensating for extended periods of time will deplete you so that you will have to feed heavily more often. Yet with practice and diligence, one can compensate for the most debilitating conditions without hardly a thought, so that even those with serious heart conditions can achieve a level of physical activity and endurance that would astonish physicians. Subtle perception. Sight of the subtle which lies within and throughout all physical things comes with practice and concentration. Most of us can, to one degree or another, perceive the energy we manipulate, the life which courses through those around us. This is not so much something that is seen with the eyes as it is something which gives the impression of sight. It is a perception, an intuition, easily ignored or discounted. It may manifest to you as light or color, as that is the easiest way your mind can interpret it. Whenever you attempt to see on this level, remember not to take the idea of sight too literally and instead trust your instincts and impressions. Another sensual impression we gain is the sense of others' physical and emotional states. This involves our ability to pick up on their energy and latent thoughts. Though this can be done simply by focusing our attention briefly on the person in question, the strongest sensations are gained through physical contact. It is by gauging our impressions to our target's energy that we can determine whether he is sick or well, drugged, diseased, or intoxicated. We can further perceive his general emotional state, energy level, and level of power, if any. Again, these impressions can be very vague, and it will take time and practice to even realize that you can sense these things, let alone learn how to differentiate sick from well, energized from drained, and the diverse states in between. Learn through trial and error, as everyone's impressions tend to differ, and trust your instincts at all times. XXXII manifesting. We all possess a certain presence which hangs about us at all times. Whether we wish this or not, it will still be present to a limited degree, even when an effort is made to damp the effect down. Our presence tends to be dark and intimidating, and it inspires fear and uncertainty in most who are exposed to it. Some, however, find our presence darkly fascinating, and for these it manifests as an irresistible and almost sexual attraction. Manifesting is the art of taking this presence and manipulating it to our advantage. Manifesting requires much the same technique as augmentation, however in the case of manifestation, the energy gathered is not directed within ourselves, to our physical bodies. Instead, it is extended outward so that it spreads around us like a cloak. Center yourself, gather your energies, then expand them out around yourself. Visualize a nimbus of energy surrounding you, and focus on a particular image or emotion which you desire to project with this energy. A great deal of manifesting relies upon the people around you. You are extending your energy to influence their minds on a semi-conscious level. Because you are speaking directly to their unconscious minds, their individual perceptions of your intent will ultimately influence what they perceive and how they react to you. The most basic form of manifesting is manifesting the vampire. This draws upon the archetype that has developed around our kind over the years and can have a very potent psychological effect on those around you. Gather to your core all that makes you what you are, all the darkness, the alienation, the predatory need. Then shoot this concentrated energy throughout your being, extending it a few feet in front of you so that all those around you will be affected by this projection. By experimenting, you can extend this inimical aura around yourself for many feet, and what with satisfaction it clears your way through a pressing crowd. Using essentially the same technique, you can project fear, respect, intimidation, attraction, awe, and virtually anything else into the minds of those around you. Most will react to this projection on an unconscious level, moving toward you or hastily out of your way as you desire. Manifesting will especially draw the attention of those who are awakened or even semi-awake. This effect may also be used to obscure yourself from others. The technique is the same, but instead of projecting fear or attraction, you should simply influence those around you to ignore you. Project obscurity and the sense that you are unremarkable and blend into your surroundings. When done properly, this will allow you to lose yourself in a crowd or even help you to hide unnoticed in an empty room. Exclusive nature of the aura. We all share a distinctive aura which others may perceive and use to identify us. Our vampiric signature is most obviously expressed in the auras of priests and least obvious in the auras of concubines. We may also perceive this aura as well as the auras of others. This perception occurs on the subtle level and enables us to gain information about those around us. Essentially, the aura is the subtle body where it extends beyond the limits of the physical body. As we constantly tread upon the threshold of spirit and matter, our subtle bodies are much larger than those of ordinary folk, and they extend far around us, depending upon our self-mastery, energy level, and level of power. The aura can be perceived in several relatively thin layers of almost light which extend just beyond the skin. If you look for actual, physical light extending around the body like a halo, you will miss the subtle nuances of the actual aura. The aura can be perceived as light or color, though it is really neither of these things. In truth, light and color are merely the best metaphors we can devise in order to describe and interpret something which layers over physical reality from the subtle like a double exposure. The aura may appear texture, most often like a liquid oily, rippling, misty. It is not static but fluid and is constantly though subtly changing. It can be perceived through touch as warmth or as a subtle tension or pressure that is almost there beneath your fingers. Its essence is subtle and thus our experience of it is subtle. Perception of the aura is ultimately something which must be intuited, perceived by insight more than with our ordinary senses. XXXV Perceiving the aura. The best place to first look for a glimpse of the aura is on the hand around the fingers. Look closely at the area just above the flesh. A very small layer, perhaps only millimeters thick, should be perceptible. It will differ in texture and quality from the air around it, and after a time, colors may suggest themselves to you. At all times you should trust your instincts and impressions and allow them to guide you to your conclusions. Do not doubt your perceptions until after you have explored them fully. Once you are finished, you can step back and analyze your experience all you wish. After you have focused on the first layer, another layer, like a misty ring above the first, may become perceptible. This is the outer shell of the aura. It varies in thickness from person to person. The layer of the aura can actually vary from day to day or hour to hour on any given person according to mood, energy level, and so forth. In general, this layer is colorless but may appear lighter or darker in varying shades of gray. When particularly thick and opaque, this usually suggests shields. The inner layer of the aura can vary in brightness and color according to health, emotional state, and energy level. There is no standard interpretation chart for any of these qualities, as perception is strongly influenced by the subjective expectations of the individual. We filter all of our perceptions, to one degree or another, through our individual symbol system. Thus, intuition has proven to be the only set rule for aura interpretation. What are your emotional reactions and instinctual responses to a particular color or quality in the aura? If you see a particular color, analyze what that color means to you. The aura, like so many other psychic impressions, speaks to you in the language of symbol. As your symbol system is uniquely your own, you must come to understand the meaning of your individual symbols if you are to accurately interpret your perceptions of the aura. XXXV Energy manipulation. It is part of our essential nature to manipulate energy, and we are not limited to only taking energy away from others into ourselves. Because we can sense energy, grasp it, influence it, and channel it, we may also give energy to others. Most often, we do this to help and to heal, though like all things, this skill can also be used to hurt and harm. For most energy manipulations, our best focus is our hands. We can easily gather energy into our hands and manipulate it. If the energy comes from within ourselves, we need but to draw the energy into our center, then channel the energy down to either or both hands. If you are successful in focusing energy into your hands, they will begin to grow warm and tingle. The capillaries will expand, causing a splotchy pinkening of the skin as, on a subtler level, the energy channels also expand to increase circulation on both levels. A thrumming sensation may encompass your arms all the way up to the elbows and in some cases may even be perceptible to those around you. If someone touches your hands at this point, he will not only notice the increased heat, a byproduct of the coalescing energy, but he will also feel an electrical vibration coursing through your flesh. Once you have gathered such a charge to your hands, you may direct the energy toward a specific goal. To do this, you must visualize what you wish to do, accompanying the visualization with actual physical contact and motions to help maintain focus. Say the energy ball. Once you have learned how to focus and direct energy through your body, the most basic form of external energy manipulation is the energy ball. Cup your hands slightly until you feel a buildup of energy gather in your palm. It will have a barely perceptible heft to it, and if you press your fingers around it, you will feel a subtle tension before it begins to give. This energy is malleable, like a very viscous fluid, and may be handled and shaped as you would clay. Bring your hands together, palms still cupped and slightly parted, and form the energy into a ball. Feel its weight and the tension it creates between your fingers. Mold it and shape it with your hands. In this state, it can be thrown at a target or passed from person to person. In general, anyone struck with such a neutral ball of energy will feel something, though they may be hard-pressed to define what. If you look at this collected energy as you would the aura, you will find that it is perceptible as something misty or oily in the space between your hands. You may charge this energy with a specific emotion or sensation. Simply concentrate on the energy in your hands and concentrate on that emotion or sensation. Recall it so completely that you actually experience it while focusing on the energy ball. Direct the sensation to the energy in your hands. The energy will then become infused with the emotion or sensation which you generated. Now, when you throw this energy ball at someone, they will experience the sensation or emotion as you did. They may ignore it or they may act upon what they suddenly feel. Sometimes, if the sensation is strong enough, they may jump and instinctively look over at you. Augmented healing. Energy gathered into your hands, if allowed to remain neutral and uncharged by any extraneous emotions, can be used to heal yourself or another. Cup the energy in your hand and hold this around the affected area. Channel the energy through your hands to the wound. As you send the energy through your hands, extends your awareness to include all that the energy comes into contact with. Focus on gradually smaller and smaller levels until you sense the source of the problem. Your perception of the problem and how you seek to deal with it will depend upon your knowledge of anatomy and your technique of visualization. In general, you can speed the healing of any wound by vitalizing the area with energy and stimulating both circulation and cell growth. If there are broken bones, visualize the ends of the bone knitting back together. If there are tears in muscles or tendons, will the fibers to reknit themselves. Visualize the blood gathering to carry away the fluids which cause swelling or any clotted matter left over from bruises or other ruptures. Visualize cell growth and mitosis occurring on an increased level. Flood the area with as much energy as you can spare, then gradually cease the flow. Keep your hands over the area, holding the heat you've generated in place for a bit longer, then pull away. 6 Advanced healing techniques. Sometimes a wound or illness may not have a physical cause. In such a case, lay your hands upon the area where the problem is focused and extend your awareness to the internal level. Probe out with your subtle sense and locate the intrusion which is the source of the problem. This may be a dark spot or a dense object. It may merely be a feeling, such as a sensation of cold or pain. Find it, then, taking one hand, close both your physical and subtle self around it. Draw it out and throw it away. Do not take it into yourself, as this can cause complications, not the least of which is the possibility of having the infection attack you. Sometimes a wound or illness may exist on both the physical and subtle levels. In such a case, place your hands over the affected area and extend your awareness to the internal level. Draw out the subtle intrusion first. Heal the problem on the physical level only after this has been done. The physical and the subtle levels of existence are so interlinked that if you heal the physical but leave the subtle aspect untouched, the subtle intrusion will eventually cause the physical problem to recur. You may use these techniques on yourself or others as the need arises. If your visualization is strong, you may not need to touch the affected area when healing yourself. Simply center, build up some energy, then focus inward and become aware of your internal processes. Focus your perception on the affected area and proceed with the healing visualizations discussed above. Cease when you feel you have done all the good that you can. XLI shielding techniques. Because of what we are, we have little need for shields ourselves. Shields are, by definition, antithetical to our nature. We are constantly taking energy into ourselves. To close ourselves off from this would be to close ourselves off from what sustains us. Selective shields, or filters, which allow only certain things through, are more useful to us by far. Our best defense against energy intended to do us harm is simply to fall back upon our essential nature. It is our nature to devour, and so we merely take it all in, good energy, bad energy, tendrils, missiles, all of it. While we rarely gain any actual benefit from taking such energies in, neither are we harmed by them. If you are attacked by something, grab onto it on the subtle level and pull it into yourself. Break it down into neutral energy as you would process anything else. Though in general the assimilation of energy is an unconscious process, in cases of attack, you may actually have to concentrate on the process. Just will the energy to break down. Purge it of any specific charges or intents and make it a part of you. You may also purge it, process it, then throw it back in the direction it came as a response to whoever attacked you. If such an attack is clearly being directed by another, trace the attack to its source as you would travel down one of your own tendrils. Then reverse the attack and drain through your enemy's connection to you. The attacker will usually be so surprised by this response as to cut the attack off immediately. Most of the awakened consciously or unconsciously set up shields in order to guard against a myriad of psychic attacks. Shields, as they are constructed of energy, can be drained into non-existence by those of our kind. The energy may not be something which we can process or make use of, but it is energy nonetheless and therefore not proof against our manipulations. XLII creating filters. We are constantly pulling energy into ourselves. This function is unconscious and often undiscerning. When you are among a group of people, you will draw upon the ambient energy that is generated by that group. Occasionally, there is a quality to the energy of a group that you may not wish to take into yourself. This is especially true if many of the individuals in the group are tainted in some way, as with illness, intoxication, or drug use. Rather than shielding yourself and thus blocking yourself off from all the energy in the room, you may set up a filter. Less rigid and opaque than a true shield, a filter allows you to sort through all that you take in and block certain elements of that energy out. A filter may target certain emotions which you do not wish to vicariously experience, or they may filter out the taint of alcohol, drugs, or disease so you do not draw these things into yourself during a general crowd feed. Target the specific energy that you do not wish to take in. Visualize a filter, like a porous shield, that will allow everything to pass through except this particular energy. If you are actively drawing from the crowd around you, simply be selective in what you pull into yourself through nets or tendrils. Isolate the unwanted energy from everything else and discard it before you actively pull the rest through. All this requires is an awareness of yourself and your surroundings on the subtle level. A filter can also be used to take only a specific sort of energy in. Simply isolate that element among the ambient energy, focus on it, then draw upon it to the exclusion of all else. As the subtle and the physical are intricately interwoven, this can work on chemicals present in your target's system. Though physical contact facilitates this technique, it can be done with effort from a distance. In this way, you can focus on the drugs in someone's system and pull them away, thus robbing them of their high. Treat the drugs as you would any intrusion on the subtle level, grabbing onto them with your subtle body but not pulling them into yourself. If you grab onto the drugs or alcohol present in another's system in this way and pull them into yourself, you will experience the effects of the drugs vicariously. Sometimes this is desirable. Simply focus on someone who is suitably intoxicated, focus on the element present in their systems that is responsible for the intoxication, and draw it into yourself. Once again, this is most efficiently done with person-to-person physical contact, but can be effected in a group or long-distance draw. Because you have the ability to manipulate energy on such a level, you can also consciously burn the resulting intoxication out of your system whenever you choose. Simply extend your awareness within yourself, focus on the intoxicant, gather it up and cast it away. This works to a certain degree even if you have physically imbibed the intoxicant. Live spiritual cleansings. Energy is our greatest resource. It sustains us, it makes us strong. It is both our weapon and our tool. It is our nature to tread the very threshold between spirit and matter. For this reason, we have a greater sensitivity to the subtle than any other physical being. However, our sensitivities are both a power and a bane. Just as we can easily affect the energies of the subtle reality, so too are we easily affected by them. We are very sensitive to the energy of the places we live. Discarded energy and emotions flake off of people much like dust, and over time they inevitably build up in a place. A build-up of negative emotions can begin to affect us by altering our health and our mood. This is true to a certain extent of every living being, but for us the sensitivity level is excruciatingly high. We should take care in our living spaces to encourage a good flow of energy through the rooms, and to make certain that the psychic space of our houses is cleaned out once in a while. To effect such a cleaning, simply go through the house from room to room, reaching out on the subtle level with your energy and scraping things down. Visualize extensions of your energy body literally scraping down the walls and gathering the crud out of the corners. Take care to gather this detritus together and hold it, do not draw it into yourself. When you have gone through the entire house, work toward the front or back door and throw the stuff out. Shake it off your hands, scraping it off if it seems to cling aggressively. Outside, energy flows more freely than indoors, and this negative build-up will be carried away and dissipate naturally once expelled. Often we will unconsciously react to the subtle nature of a place, responding to the impressions we get from it without even really thinking about it. In order to promote the healthiest atmosphere for ourselves, we must take care that our living space is arranged in such a way that we respond to it positively on the subtle level as well as on the physical. Techniques like Feng Shui are crucial to our kind, as even the slightest upset in the energy of a place can affect us. In the most ideal case, the space in which we live should be attuned to us, charged much like the sacred space in a temple or Wiccan circle. Many of us build our sacred space around us naturally and without thinking about it, so that the difference between our space and that of others can be distinctly felt when we visit others and when we travel. XLV other side beings. The subtle reality is immense. Because our concepts of distance and physical boundaries do not exist there, any single space may be populated by hundreds of subtle beings, resonances, and impressions. Even the most desolate, empty space here in the physical world is crawling with things on the subtle level. Some can perceive and interact with us, but most are largely too out of phase to notice anything but their own small sliver of the realm. Most ordinary people are like the out-of-phase beings. They are too intent on their one small aspect of reality to respond to anything else. Yet because of our sensitive natures, we cannot help but perceive and respond to at least some of these other things, and because we exist more completely in both the physical and the subtle realities, many of these things are likely to notice and respond to us. Some of our kind find it intensely disturbing to feel and be felt by such otherworldly things. Rarely are subtle beings interested enough in our realm to attempt to do malicious harm to anyone. Yet, all things which exist in the subtle reality feed as we do, and many of them seek out humanity as their main source of food. Just as our long-distance drains do not really harm our targets and are rarely even felt by them, so too are these preying entities rarely felt by anyone they seek out. Yet it can be very inconvenient for us to become a source of energy for another being, as we do not really produce enough energy to sustain ourselves. We should be aware of this aspect of the subtle reality, and we should hone our perceptions so that we can sense when a subtle being is present in our home. Since we can interact with the subtle as well as the physical realm, we have the ability to forcibly eject such beings from our home. Much as one would clean the house of spent energy and emotions, simply isolate the entity, reach out on the subtle level and gather it up. As a subtle being, it has little definitive form, so you will have to judge by your impressions whether you have gotten hold of it or not. Once you have hold of the thing, carry it out to the front or back door and essentially give it the boot. Toss it out of your living space and project the definite impression that you do not want it coming back. Most subtle beings seem somewhat intimidated by our kind, as we can just as easily feed upon them as they can from us, and this seems to cause them discomfort or harm. Many subtle entities are not harmful at all, and discretion should be used when an invading being is punished by being thrown out. A certain amount of subtle traffic is always to be expected in our homes. First of all, there is the simple fact that subtle beings are all over the place. It is the nature of the subtle reality that such things occupy all spaces and no space at the same time. Yet there is also the fact that many subtle entities seem attracted to our kind. They may sense our unique energy signature, and they may be attracted out of simple curiosity. To a certain extent, we have a good deal in common with these beings, especially in the manner in which we interact with the subtle reality and feed upon energy. We certainly have a more real and palpable presence in the subtle reality than most incarnated beings. As it is difficult to communicate with such beings except in the vaguest terms, their reasons will probably remain known only to them. Whatever the case, we should not be surprised or alarmed by their presence unless they take an active role in disturbing the sanctity of our home. XLVI creating change. Because of the way we interact with energy and the subtle reality, we are actively connected to the collective unconscious. We naturally respond to the eddies and tides of beliefs and ideas in that vast, psychic realm. With effort, we can also naturally affect those eddies and tides. The collective unconscious exists on the level of pure energy. It has a subtle reality all its own and is a part of the greater spiritus mundi, the spirit of the world. All humanity influences and is influenced by the collective unconscious. It is the sum total of all their thoughts, dreams, emotions, myths, and nightmares. It is the well of inspiration and the source of creative thought. The unawakened are unaware of the effect they have upon the collective unconscious. Nor are they aware of how it in turn affects them. It defines their beliefs, their dreams, their very perception and experience of reality. As vampires, we are already living embodiments of a very potent archetype which lies deep in the darker regions of the collective unconscious. The nature of our vampirism is in part defined by this archetype in the collective. Our strengths, our weaknesses, and the image which we project to others is strongly influenced by the collective archetype. Paradoxically, what we are and what we have been in the past has also in part defined the shape which the archetype takes. In this we are both the creators and the creations of the archetype. Such paradox is woven throughout reality. We can become consciously aware of our connection to the collective. Thus we can consciously choose what elements will affect us and what will not. In this way, we can shape our individual perceptions of reality. On a more profound level, we can also consciously influence the collective. We can insert thoughts, ideas, beliefs, and set them adrift on its currents. They will circulate among the masses of humanity, occasionally surfacing in an individual's thoughts, often influencing the behavior, perceptions, and beliefs of the unawakened on a profound yet unspoken level. In this way, we can shape the reality of others. We can subtly influence thoughts and attitudes on a worldwide scale. Such subtle manipulation is very difficult to master, and it requires an extensive awareness of the collective. Those who seek to influence the world in this way must also be willing to be influenced in turn on an equally profound level. As an active element in a passive world, the collective will surge up and manifest through you. You will become a tool of the Spiritus Mundi. It will guide your actions so that you may bring change, destruction, and regeneration where it is needed most. Xlei cycles. We are the many born. We are the immortal. Eternal, we wander the eons, moving to the rhythm of our own inner tides. We are active elements moving through passive worlds. We ensure that energy is in constant motion. That which is static, we cause to move. That which has grown stagnant, we tear away. We separate the subtle from the dense, spirit from matter. We are agents of the dynamic balance which keeps the universe in constant motion. We separate the dual aspects of reality in order to reunite them. We seek the union of opposites which transforms all things. Ours is a journey toward understanding, and our charge is knowledge and wisdom. We are the catalysts, and we must serve to awaken the slumbering world to its deepest levels of reality. A few notes in closing the Codex. Our culture teaches us that we cannot stand on our own. We cannot know something just because we know it. We need authentic degrees and certificates in order to prove our knowledge and understanding to others. If we are to amount to anything, we need approval. And from youth upwards, it is ingrained in us to seek this approval from parents, from teachers, from friends,